know it not. So know it not is what I'm calling this, and know it not is when someone comes off as though they know something, but they don't really know it. And that's kind of what I think about myself with like doing these. And I don't want to call them the R words when you like have a book, fill in the blank book, because I don't like that. So I don't want to call it that book, two syllables, R word. I'm sure you get it. Okay, so I read a Catch in a Rye. No, I didn't. I've read a Catch in a Rye a long time ago, but I read a Clockwork Orange, and so the general know it not about a Clockwork Orange is this: is Alex is forced into Ludovico's technique, and the technique essentially like he has to watch these videos, these horrific, ultra-violent videos, which will supposedly force him to become sensitive to violence, thus never committing a violent crime again or violent, thing again. So that's the it in a nutshell. So on the personal, because I think it's important to mention like how it affects me personal. On the personal, I've experienced nightmares about this book, and genuine concern for how men treat women in today's society. I've always That's always been something that's really bugged me. Um, right, so similar books that I thought about when I read this um, are A Catcher in the Rye, which I've mentioned already, um, and Flowers for Algernon, which are I think are really similar to A Clockwork Orange. Okay, so a couple quotes that I found that are worth sharing. And so here we go. The first quote: "But brothers, this biting of their toenails over what is the cause of badness is what turns me into a fine laughing malchick. They don't go into what is the cause of goodness, so I of the other shop." That's the first quote. And it's interesting to think, we don't necessarily think about why are you behaving kindly, but we do look into, why is someone behaving erratically. The second quote: "Goodness is something chosen. When a man cannot choose, he ceases to be a man." I'm going to read that one again. So the second quote goes: "Goodness is something chosen. When a man cannot choose, he ceases to be a man," which is really interesting. It goes into the theme of this book because the character doesn't necessarily have any choice anymore about being good. Some themes I saw in this book: sex, violence to the extreme level. At one point, I was ready to put this book down. Um, Good versus evil, coming of age. There are many more. All right, so I would love to teach this book one day, and at one point I thought, no, I never want to teach this book. But there are points where I thought, yeah, I would take this book on, and I say that with knowing that I don't have the female perspective walk in life. So I say that I would teach this book with, I will admit, a lot of guilt, but I would approach it very sensitively, and I would teach this book on the college level. Um, so looking at the teaching part of it, and there's some goals that I would have for teaching this book would be to explore satire. So it would be a satire unit. There would be more light-hearted works in this unit as well. This book is brutal, and it poses the question: what policies are too much or heinous to secure a crime-free or a society with less crime? Um, I would also teach a modest proposal, which would be taught in this unit as it seeks to also find solutions to a societal issue, hunger. And I think that there's two connections. Seeing that the Clockwork Orange looks to solve a problem in society with violence, and a modest proposal, if you know that short story, looks to do the same thing as well. Um, okay, I would consider, and I repeat, I consider I would consider showing movies, clips, or photos of ultraviolence in an attempt to learn if students agree with the theory put forward in the book. Clips and photos will be shown weekly, and students would be asked to note how or if the photos affected their lives while outside of class. Or students would be asked to place a violent um, photo on the home screen of their telephones in an attempt to learn if exposure to violence quells violence. Now that I have written this and thought about this idea, I don't think this is something I would do, but I will keep it there for conversation's sake. Um, I'm very much one that likes to do hands-on things and like to immerse students in the reading, but I don't know hmm, how I would go about doing that. But I like the idea, but the implementation of it, I don't know. Some literary devices or some things to teach: the unreliable narrator, um, the third or the fourth wall is broken, shock value is certainly there, satire is there, and ethics and morals is huge in this book. Recommendations: I recommend it if you have a high tolerance for violence. Um, yeah. Um, this book makes me want to read Infinite Jest. It really makes me want to read Infinite Jest, and that was one of the books that I've been meaning to read, and I put it off, but now I'm like so wanting to read Infinite Jest. Um, I like the challenge of this book, and I know that Infinite Jest is going to do the same thing. Um, and it also makes me want to read A Handmaid's Tale. Some questions that I have, just for viewers. The protagonist addresses the audience or reader as though we are his friend. Did this literary trick, if you will, work to form a connection of bond with Alex? I'm curious about that if you've read this book. Or if you know books that, like, you know, the character speaks to you personally. Does that work or does that not work? Did you pity Alex? Does his young age of 15 when he commits these crimes affect your view of Alex? Should criminals be punished with no attempt to reform? Um, and I mentioned that last question: should criminals be punished with no attempt to reform? Because there was a quote in the book that brings that notion forward. And the next quote is: does God want forced goodness or the choice of goodness? Okay, I thank you for watching the video. That is all.